All right.
All right.
Ready,
Hello,
everybody. All right, mute.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here today to hear about the Community Foundation's new Arts Education Grant. I am Annette Jimenez Gleason, Senior Program Officer for Vitality. And also with us today is Berta Rivera, Director of Community Programs, and Cameron Caputi, Director of Community and Foundation Analytics, as well as Nikia Washington, Program Officer for Equity. And they're all here because this new grant is at the intersection of the Foundation's two grant-making pillars of vitality and equity, and is designed specifically around improving arts access for the students across our region. We really appreciate you being with us today and for submitting, those of you who submitted your questions in advance. That really helped with putting together today's presentation. If there are other questions as we go along, please put them in the chat. The chat will be monitored and we will address them during the Q&A at the end. And in case you're wondering, and we'll talk about this as well, but the grant page itself on our website and the application in the grant portal will go live on February 10th. So to begin, I want to emphasize that the development of this grant program was very intentional and is unlike anything since I started working here at the foundation in 2018. It included data analysis, it included cross-departmental collaboration and research on other arts education grant programs around the country, and including a review of the NEA Arts Education Grant Program. But the genesis of it really stemmed from trends that we saw over the past few years. So that's why you see the data on this slide. The last grant cycle specifically had 74 total applications, but that is everything including drafts. And that total was amount requested of 602,000. But when we distilled it down, we had a total of 53 grants that were awarded, and 47 of those being in our new grant process of applications, having the brief applications of 5,000 or less. There was a total of 53 for 463,000, but nearly 20% of that had touched on in some way arts education programming. So we thought there's something there. Um, Perhaps it's time to pivot our general vitality arts and culture grant programming and have a grant round focused on arts education. Because at the same time, one of the funds that we use for arts and culture, or we had access, I'm sorry, to a new fund around arts and culture that had itself a focus on arts education. So really, these two things tied together to provide the perfect opportunity to create this new grant program. And we'll talk a little bit more about that coming up and a little bit more about why we're doing things differently this year. So I'm going to turn it over to Berta.
Good morning, everyone. Just a quick reminder, because I know some have come in after we already started. If you have questions throughout it, there is a button at the bottom of your toolbar that says Q&A. You can go ahead and put those in there, and I'll be monitoring that, and we'll be able to get to those towards the end of the presentation. And we also allows us to keep a record of them. So anything we don't get to, we can respond to directly in kind of an FAQ fashion with an email. So a little bit of the why. So for those of you that are familiar with our arts and culture funding at the foundation, we are one of the few who have a main focus on arts and culture and have a competitive cycle here locally. The one thing that's been interesting for us is, and that's done a great job of this, is really, and part of this she mentioned, we are really trying to lean into being more of a learning organization. And what that means for us as a foundation is to be able to get to a place where we are responding and designing grant programs or responding to needs in a way that is actually helpful and useful. So learning from those that are providing the services or that are impacted by the services. So we really want to get to a place of being able to really function in a way that's helpful, versus making or creating more barriers for those that are applying or trying to access funds. But in order to do that, we need your help to learn. So this is a real opportunity for us as you learn more through this webinar about how we want to learn and what impact that is going to have. We're really excited because, as with many things, there's always an intersectionality. It's not just one thing, right? So for this particular grant opportunity, both with arts and education for us, that's an intersection of our grant making areas, both the vitality piece and the equity piece. So the education piece falls under that. And being able to kind of measure something that covers both of those areas, understanding that it allows us to really see the full breadth of what's happening. And so part of what you're going to learn a little bit more about today, towards the end, is how we're going to do things a little bit differently, with reporting and how we're going to actually evaluate. One of the things that's been really critical for us and that we've been kind of charged to do from our funders, from our donors, from our board, is really get a better sense of what impact we're actually having and how are we actually measuring that? What data are we collecting? And then what are we doing with that data in terms of whether that's information sharing or redesigning or updating kind of our grant opportunities. And so we really wanted to come to this approach with this first opportunity for arts education to really be data and community informed. And then that's going to share a little bit more about how we've engaged the community of arts education into the design of this. So I'll leave that to her. And she already touched on the data piece in terms of us really pulling the themes out of the last arts and grant cycle to understand that there was a larger percentage of those doing arts education. So can we focus on that and what might we want to learn? So we're excited for you to kind of come along with us on this journey. It is going to be different than our past grants, just in terms of the intentionality behind what we want to learn from you. So in most applications, and you'll see it also in this one, we ask you, what are your outcomes? What are you hoping to achieve with the program? And then typically the report will be, did you achieve those things? We're going to have an added piece, to allow us really the ability to be consistent in how we share what our impact is. So we'll have some standard questions for everyone that our colleague Cameron will share a little bit later in the presentation. But ultimately, what we hope to do through this grant cycle is meet the needs of the arts organizations directly, but then also with the information that we get and the impact we're able to measure, is really us being able to share that and that encourage additional people to be able to donate towards these efforts. So it allows us to fundraise to have that data, and just make the pot bigger, and be able to share that story. So that's kind of the why we decided to do this, why it looks a little bit different than typical grants that we have seen. So I'm going to pass it back to Annette, to dig in more into the actual opportunity, what we're hoping to learn.
Thanks, Berta. Yeah, so as she said, this is a pilot program, and it really is around the goal to amplify, to have data that gives us information on the impact of our funding. And it will be specific questions. It will also include anecdotal evidence, which we hope will not only ensure greater access, but identify gaps, funding patterns, and offer opportunities to grow programming that can help provide guidance. You can provide information and guidance to our community partners. To that end, after we did the research around the hypothesis of how we can increase access, we sat down with a focus group and asked them, what do you think? Is this is our hypothesis going in the right direction? So the peer focus group included folks from Strings for Success, from Hochstein, from Veritas Charter School, and from Go Arts in Batavia. And so their input was very helpful. They said that the June timeframe for awards, it could be a little challenging. So using that input, we decided to change the original timeline that we had created, and so we're opening it earlier than we had anticipated. So it will open on February 10th and it will close on uh, March 28th, which will give a longer time frame than we usually do um, for our grant cycles to allow you time to research the programming that you want to provide. All right. Because the goal here is really, as Berta mentioned, to learn from you so that you can continue to better meet the needs of students, participants, teachers, and support the nonprofits who provide this programming. So we're very not only intentional, but this process is going to be iterative, and we may adjust as we go moving forward in this space. Um, the other thing we want to emphasize, in addition to the longer grant cycle, is that this is not meant to just be about, this isn't meant to be a call for new programming. We understand that increasing access means expanding existing programming or allowing you to improve uh, your programmings. I mean, sorry, your programs. So that's not to say that new programs won't be considered, but that's not the intent. The grants will range from 5 to 10,000, which the focus group confirmed is a reasonable grant size. And the categories, again, are around access. So it's, are you increasing access, equitable access overall? Are you increasing geographic access? And are you increasing students' engagement and enjoyment of the arts? And in addition, and the geographic access is because in addition to last year's applications showing the 20% connection to arts education, we looked at it a little more closely and it revealed that less than 10% of those proposals represented organizations based outside Monroe County. So we're really seeking to hone in on increasing access geographically as well as equitably. From both the focus group and the questions that were shared with us in advance for those who had indicated interest in learning more about this new program, we understand that there are challenges being faced that go beyond programming support, which has been the traditional grants that have been provided through the Vitality Arts and Culture cycle. So that is why really responding to what we heard from the focus group, this funding will be flexible. It will let you decide what will improve the quality of your programming by addressing the specific challenges or unmet needs that you're facing. Again, we get the access is not just about increasing seats, but how meeting those challenges helps you reach more students. Thus, these grants will provide operating and capacity building support. You're the experts. We are going to let you decide how this funding will best suit your programming. So that could include transportation, materials, staff training, even childcare based on one question that we had received ahead of time. Since we're not looking for anyone to create new programs, but have the ability to expand access by improving their capacity, we also expect that the collaborative partners, be they schools or community-based organizations, are in place. So hopefully that longer grant cycle allows for, if those partnerships aren't in place already, to establish those. And the evaluation component, which you're going to hear about in a few minutes, will be very specific, as Berta alluded to. We are finalizing the report form on our end, but it will collect the same information from your organizations. And that, again, is going to help us measure impact, but it's going to help you measure impact as well. And the process of gathering data is and having that concrete information um, to measure that impact helps us grow the resources as was mentioned as well. So this is a preview of the grant profile page that's going to live on our website. So you can see it's still tied to strengthening the regional vitality by improving the access to arts education for our students. You see the specific categories I mentioned: equitable access, geographic access, student engagement and enjoyment. It emphasizes the flexible support. One thing I didn't mention, that it does cover arts programming across all disciplines, um, and offers opportunities to support professional development as well. And the eligibility is, as is standard for the foundation, 501c3, or have a fiscal sponsorship. Again, geographically, we want to see more. We're hoping that we will get more proposals outside Monroe County and our 7 other counties. And I may not have mentioned this part, but it is for pre-K, grades pre-K through 12 only, in partnership with a school or community organization. And again, the unique evaluation part, I'm going to hand it over to Cameron to walk us through.
Sure. Thanks for setting that up. So I think the biggest component of this that might be different from other grants that you've gotten from us in the past is the post-program survey aimed at the participants. So we have 3 questions that we've outlined so far that hit on our overarching goals. So the first of which is, have you ever done this type of art before? Because part of that equity of access is, have you participated in this? So are you strengthening existing ties in the community around this art? Are you providing something new that has not been in this community before? It's not a negative thing to have that be, yes, we've participated in this sort of art before. The second one is going to be, did you have fun in this program? And that's really just to gauge the excitement of the students surrounding what they participated in. And then lastly is, how excited are you about art in the future? And that question is gauged to see, did we make progress in terms of community momentum towards the arts? These 3 questions the language is simple and meant to be able to be answered by students even under the 3rd grade level. And I have some experience. I used to work at RCSD with how we can go ahead and get these surveys done. It's going to be multimodal if needed, but there will be like an online one, which is the primary entry. But happy to work with those awarded this grant on how we can move forward and get those surveys in. The other promise is that each of you who are awarded will also get the survey results packaged nicely back to you to use for your own evaluations or for fundraising purposes. Next, we're also asking questions that are more process oriented, such as, how many seats do you anticipate opening up in total for your program? How many seats did you have in the beginning that were filled and at the end that were filled? And asking questions about hours/days of operations. This just kind of helps us level set our offerings throughout the community. And I will also be packaging these up and sending back to you. But I think, as Annette said, leaning on your expertise is that these evaluations are not about, okay, you decided to, replace some of the materials and then also hire a part-time administrator. Well, I'm not really concerned on how those materials are or how effective that administrator is. I'm really concerned about the overall offerings of the program. And I think these questions kind of show that we're zooming out in our evaluation, but we think this is going to provide valuable information to our funders, to your funders, about the great progress that you've already been doing. So thank you very much, and happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, so I will just follow up really quick because I'm going through some of the questions that came in. I just want to emphasize, again, thank you all for your interest in participating. I know this is geared towards K through 12, which has been on our website and in the email, and that so you did mention it, not in the webinar, but it was shared previously. The one thing that I wanted to just kind of wrap us with is while we'll be asking some of these questions, it is built into the system that you're already used to using if you've got an awarded. So when the final report comes, those questions will be built in. They're not meant to create more work. This is information that most of you already have. You know, what's your hours of operation? How many days are you open? How many people started? How many people finished? And for us, a key part of that is not necessarily to look at how many people, because sometimes those numbers fluctuate, right? Or sometimes you start with a lot more students and you end with a smaller group. What we're hoping to be able to get a better understanding of, and we will also be asking, is with these dollars that are flexible, we know that there are challenges for students who start and want to continue to participate, but things come up for them, whether that's transportation, whether it's, you know, having to watch family members, whether that's feeling really comfortable in the space where professional development comes in, especially around cultural competency or trauma-informed training, or being able to have additional staff person that might be able to help for those students that come in that need that one-on-one support, that are used to receiving it in a classroom setting, which allows them to really fully engage in the program. So those are the type of things that we want to learn. You know, the focus group was great, especially because they were able to kind of share with us. It's not always obviously about the program itself. There are quality programs out there. It's the challenges that these programs face to meet the needs of the students that are walking in the door. So when we think about whether that's being able to provide snacks and food, whether that's having specifically trained staff or more staff that can provide one-on-one support, whether that means, you know, transportation, being able to support students in that area, we really, as Annette was saying, want you guys, you know best your programs and your students that you're working with. And so we want these dollars to be flexible in a way that will really be able to showcase, you know, we've in past years with this new funding, we were able to add this particular component or train our staff in this particular way. So this is what the student's experience was. So again, we want to keep it super simple in terms of what we're asking. It's not anything crazy, but it is one thing that we're going to ask every person who gets awarded those particular things, the survey, and then those two questions, because it makes it easier for us when we are analyzing the full grant cycle to say this percentage versus everybody's got different outcomes, and then they're reporting on the own outcomes they created. So it's harder to tell that story overall. And we want to get really good at being able to tell that story. So I will wrap there, and I'm looking at some of the questions. One of them I answered, is this just for school age students? Yes, it's pre-K through 12. Is this just for in school? Nope, it can be used if you're working with a community organization, if you happen to be housed at a school, if it's a school time program. The one thing that I just will say for those that are not as familiar with the organizations that were part of our focus group, Annette did a really great job of trying to ensure that it was different type of organizations. So organizations that are standalone, like Go Arts, where it's an actual building where students can go and it's within the community. Programs that have an affiliation with the school, so they might be working with a school, or doing certain lessons within the school. Some that it is the school itself that's operating arts. So we wanted to make sure that those different types of organizations that we heard their voices to be able to make sure that we can make this an opportunity that meets needs of different types of organizations. Another question, are we allowed to use any of these funds to help market the program? I think part of this is to support operating. I think if there's a really clear need, because we will ask in the application, what you plan on using it for, how is that going to increase access and equity? As long as the marketing piece, if that means we're translating things, you know, to a different language, or we're marketing to a group that we haven't been able to reach before, the answer to that is yes. You have the ability to use it how you think it's going to be best for your program, as long as you can explain to us how that is going to impact equity and access for students. So yes. Next one, can I use a fiscal sponsor, a GVCA, to do something in Mount Morris CSD? That's a much more specific question that we'll need to learn more about. You can use We don't determine what fiscal sponsor you use. It's really, that's a whole separate process. As long as you have a fiscal sponsor, they are aligned, mission aligned with what you're doing, and there's a fiscal sponsorship agreement signed, you can use who you choose, because that's entirely up to you as an organization of what fiscal sponsor you want to go with. Any other questions that are coming up? Those are all the ones that are so far were in the Q&A. So just as a reminder, Annette, do you want to share again just the timeline for us?
Yeah, so once again, the application will open on February 10th. As I've said, and we've all said, this really is an iterative process. It's very exciting for the foundation to do something so unique like this. So we are excited to be partners with you in this learning process. So we want you to reach out with suggestions, input, questions. You just please contact me as we put the finishing touches on the application form. We really are looking to learn from you as the experts, and uh, we will send a reminder out to everyone for the application opening on the 10th, closing on March 28th for everyone who signed up. We will share this webinar link and the information about the new grant program across all our social media platforms for anyone to share and in your networks. So that's where we are. So we really appreciate all of you being here.
I got a couple more questions
right.
that came in. So Cam, I have one for you. And Cameron, can you just, I completely forgot, can you introduce yourself and your title? What is your role here at the foundation?
Of course, yeah, I'm the director of analytics here at the foundation, and just looking as this is a pilot program, we're hoping to get it right and hoping to be able to pitch this sort of thing for expansion. So I'm here to help make that case.
All right, so the question for you, Cam, is to clarify, the post-program surveys are expected to be sent to all participants. Are there requirements around completion rates of the post-program survey?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously we're hoping for 100% completion rate, and by doing that, we're hoping to have the survey be administered in classroom, whether that's passing a computer or tablets around. Whether that is another option is that, we could do a self-tally system for, especially for younger kids, and teachers can enter that in directly, right? So there's going to be different options to get it done, but we're hoping that on a day when that survey happens towards the very end of the program, 100% of the people that are there do it. If they opt out, fine. Not looking to place hard participation guidelines on folks. It's not really the spirit of this. But we definitely are interested in learning more. But this is all going to be one of those things where if you're awarded this, you're going to have my contact information. We're going to be talking, and we're going to figure out the best way for this to happen for you. If I have to come out there and do it myself, I'll do it. You know what I mean? If you guys are busy, so we'll work with you.
Perfect. All right, and next question, and Annette, you can do this one. If your organization is a standalone, but is considering expanding to partner with schools, would that be supported by the community foundation?
Right. So like we said, we weren't looking for new programming, but this sounds like you have a program that you want to connect with a school, which will be a requirement for this. So yes, if you establish that partnership and you're able to provide it with a school, you can apply for this grant.
All right, two more questions in. Does this funding replace current arts vitality and equity grants at RCF, or in addition to?
Right. So we did have an initial webinar in the fall to let people know about the changes that were coming up, which included that this is separate. We will maintain our Vitality Arts and Culture cycle that opens every fall, and those awards will be announced this month and next month. We have a two-tiered process this year for those. So yes, those will continue for general arts and culture that are outside arts education programming. And there were nonprofits that applied in the Vitality Cycle, and I contacted them to let them know that um, we were shifting to the separate arts education grant cycle and that they would be able to submit when this opens.
And I'll just further clarify in terms of the equity piece. So if there are opportunities for you to apply through some of our other grant making cycles, whether that's, summer cycle, mini meals, other things that those are all separate and apart. So those opportunities will continue. This is not the only opportunity you can apply to. It's one of, that's very specific within our arts space. Next question, what about sustainability of programs funded through this opportunity? If we expand this grant, what is the expectation beyond the grant period? I will go ahead and answer that one. Because this grant is specific about increasing equity and access, this is not necessarily about supporting the programming itself. It's really an opportunity for you guys to think about what could you do in that time frame. So if it's something where it has to do with training of staff, if it's, getting supplies or getting things in different languages or whatever the case may be, what are those things that you can see that would make an impact and then be able to measure that? This particular opportunity we see moving forward. It is going to be something that's built into our existing grant making. And as we were saying, the more that we learn, the better. So if it's something where these flexible dollars are going to be helpful to train your staff every year or do different types of training or be able to offer supplies or one-on-one support for students that come in, because we know for some of you, your programs are whoever comes in the door, right? So you not always have the staff available depending on what needs are coming through the door. So if we go beyond this grant period, which we will, it's just going to be a matter of us learning from what you guys share with us this year to see what are those pieces that we need to shift and change. So that might mean, do we need to increase the grant size? Right? Do we need to be more specific around how it's used? What are we hearing from those that we're getting the award? So this is something, although it's a pilot in its form right now in terms of how it's designed, we are going to continue to do arts education. We will just tweak as needed and as we hear back from organizations that are impacted by this, how we can better improve this grant. It's not meant to stay this way forever. This is really us testing based on feedback and questions that have come in. How can we position something that allows you to determine how you want to use it? And then how can we continue to do that in a way that's helpful? So with that being said, I hope that answers your question around this. Is in terms of sustainability, this will continue to be an opportunity. It might just look different in future years. It might be tweaked in terms of how it can be used. So we wanted to go as broad as possible for you guys to determine that, and it most likely will potentially stay that way unless we hear different or how better it can be used. Will we have, oh, great question for Cam. Will we have access to this survey prior to the program beginning?
Yes. So prior to the start date, once the awards are announced, that's when this information will be conveyed to you. The only thing that's going to change is that, there's the part where I said art slash dance slash performance slash whatever. That slash will not be there for have you participated in before or did you enjoy, right? It's going to be tailored to your specific program. So I'll send that out to you once the awardees are announced.
Yeah. The other thing is this will be when you are awarded a grant and you go into the system to sign your grant agreement, you can also see the final report. So you'll always be able to view it. All that will be set up in the system ahead of time, so you can always see what the questions will be. All right, next question. I think you might have touched on this, Cam, but if you can just re-answer this. Will grantees also receive aggregate survey results for all the grantees in addition to the student survey results for their individual organization?
So that's not something that I was planning on providing back. Now, we may internally release that information at the foundation, but right now my promise is your own information back for you. If you have questions about, if you have return on investment questions or things like that, that's a broader conversation that the foundation will have to have. But right now the promise is your own information back to you.
All right. Are there any limitations as to the number of grants an organization can apply for from the foundation? Short answer, no, as long as they're within different cycles. And what I mean when I say that is you can't apply for 5 different things in this cycle. You can apply one at one organization based on each opportunity, but as long as it's a separate opportunity, they're all gonna have separate applications. There's no limit as to how many you can apply for. As long as you're eligible, you're open to however many grant opportunities we have. But we do limit it to, for each of those opportunities that you apply once. And that's a little bit different if you're a fiscal sponsor, because you might have a few different ones, so that's fine too. We're used to seeing the same fiscal sponsor for a few different organizations. Okay. What are the current percentage breakdowns regarding funds granted? Jackie, I know this is coming from you. Can you just put in the Q&A what exactly you mean by that in terms of breakdowns? I'm not quite clear on what you're referencing. And then
I already did.
oh, on the next one. Okay.
Yeah,
Oh,
I hit the send button too early.
no worries. All right. So this says clarification on the percentage. Oh, what can be used for admin, supplies, transportation? That's entirely up to you. So if you want to apply for $5,000 for supplies, if you guys want to get updated supplies, new software, however you determine that you want to use the funding, that's entirely up to you. You just got to explain to us how that increases access and equity.
Okay.
If it's specifically for administrative support or staffing, and we heard from some organizations where, sometimes it's helpful to have an aide, which would kind of symbolize a para in a normal school classroom where some students need one-on-one support. So being able to do that. For transportation, if you want to use it for that. So you can use it for either 100%, 5%, split it up. We don't want to create barriers in terms of letting us determine how you want to use it. You tell us how it's going to be most helpful. So if you want to use 100% of it for one particular thing, it's entirely up to you. If you want to split it up, it's entirely up to you. So I hope that answers your question, Jackie. Again, this is a little bit different in terms of because it can be used for operating, capacity building of your staff and your team, or just supporting the program. We want to learn from you. So we'll analyze that just for our learnings after the cycle's over, just to see what type of requests we got and what categories they fall in, because that can help to tell us information as well. But we're not going to dictate that. As long as it leads to increasing equity and access, that's all that's what we want to learn, is how do these dollars do that? And that's going to look different for everyone. Okay, so I think that's all for now. I think we covered all the questions in the Q&A. You guys all have our contact information. Obviously, everyone's connected to Annette. So please feel free to ask questions. If you don't understand, if it's confusing, if you're like, I have this, sometimes people feel like it's too good to be true, please feel free to reach out. You're seeing what we're going to share on the screen right now is what's going to be on the webpage, and obviously we'll include the link to apply. So the questions in the application, some of them will be standard, some of them are going to be specific. So we're going to ask, what category do you fall in? How are you going to use this? So check a box for capacity, operating, and or programming. And we are going to ask, how is this funding going to impact these areas in terms of access and equity? So we're going to expect you to respond directly to that, to say, if I can get money for this, this is going to allow me to do this. So again, nothing too crazy, just being able to really share your thoughts with us on how this can be helpful in that space. Okay, well, this is recorded, so we are going to be sharing this as a follow-up along with the slides. So for anyone who couldn't make it, that was on our list, we're going to make sure to get that out to them. We will also put a link to this webinar on the web page when it goes live on February as a reference point. But again, you can always reach out to Annette or any one of us here if you've got questions about it. So I think we'll wrap. Annette, you want to sign us up?
No, thanks everyone again for being here. As Berta said, please send questions. We will share this information across all our platforms. You will get the link in a follow-up email. And so thank you very much. I do want to thank the focus group again for their participation and really valuable input. Totally new process again for the foundation. So very excited about the information that this is going to provide. Again, being data informed and community informed to measure impact and benefit all of you and all the great work that you're doing. All right. So
Thank you.